Okay, so the next question says, high and unexpected inflation has a greater cost, A, for those who save than for those who borrow, B, for those who hold a little money than for those who hold a lot of money, C, for those whose wages increase by as much as inflation than for those who are paid a fixed nominal wage, or D, for savers in low income tax brackets than for savers in high income tax brackets. So high and unexpected inflation, right, is basically saying that prices have gone very high, maybe due to too much money or too much of an expansionary gap. Basically, prices are very high, and therefore the purchasing power of the dollar is lower. And so really high on inflation reduces the amount of value that you hold in your hands, right? And so that's going to have an impact on first and foremostly those who save and borrow, right? So if I save $1,000, right, and let's say the average, you're in the economy and you can only buy one good, right? So that one good is good X. If I have $1,000 and the price of good X is $10, then I can buy 100 of good X, right? That's my purchasing power. My purchasing power is 100 units of good X. Now let's say inflation happens. High and unexpected inflation drives up the price of a good X from $10 to $100. That's a price change. It has nothing to, it does not change how much money I have in savings at all, right? I still have exactly nominally $1,000 in savings. So that high unexpected inflation, which increased the price from $10 to $100, has basically decreased the amount of value or purchasing power that I have. Because now at $100, at high inflation, I can only buy 10 units, right? If each unit now of good X now costs $100, I can only buy 10 units with $1,000. Whereas before I could buy 100 units. And so my purchasing power has decreased. And that hurts me, right? Having unexpected inflation has basically hurt me as a saver. On the other hand, let's assume now that we are a borrower. So I owe a bank $1,000. And so, let's say I borrowed $1,000 from the bank, and I used that $1,000 to invest in buying good X, and I had 100 units of good X. And I planned on selling good X later and using that to pay back my loans. So if a high and unexpected inflation occurs and prices go up, what that means is each dollar is worth less, right? And so when I return my loans for $1,000, I'm returning essentially the equivalent of 10 units of good X rather than 100 units of good X, which is what I could buy with it previously. And so as a borrower, I'm ecstatic, right? I have to return not only $1,000, but in terms of value, I return a tenth of the value that I borrowed from the bank. And so answer choice A is already going to get the nail on the head. High and unexpected inflation has a greater cost for those who save than for those who borrow, because those who save are adversely affected by the decrease in purchasing power, whereas those who borrow are beneficially affected by the decrease in purchasing power. So A is going to be the right answer. Let's take a look at the previous tutor's answer. So the previous tutor says, in economics, inflation is a parameter to check the continued increase in price. In the economy, there are expected inflation and unexpected inflation. If an increase in price is expected by the economic agent, that is expected inflation. On the other hand, if an increase in price is not expected by the economic agent, then that is unexpected inflation. So pretty straightforward stuff. Purchasing power is a concept that converts the money into the number of goods and services a person can afford. Purchasing power is reduced in the case of inflation because due to an increase in price, a person can afford less amounts of the good with the same level of income. The high and unexpected level of inflation affects savers more, and the borrowers are getting benefited due to lowering their borrowing amount. Right, so that's good. I think that last half is really the important point there. So specifically, the high inflation affects savers more by reducing their purchasing power. Meanwhile, the borrowers are benefited because they are being asked because their loans are now worth less amount of money, so they have to pay back less real value on their loans. So yeah, otherwise the solution is correct. We're just clarifying a little bit, and that's going to be our final answer there. So let's